Bored at home? Head over to Chumba Casino and join some serious social casino fun. With hundreds of games at your fingertips, no purchase necessary. You can play anytime, anywhere. There's a special welcome bonus waiting for you when you sign up. Play for fun, play for free, and you can even redeem some great prizes. Visit ChumbaCasino.com and get ready to reel in the fun. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello. 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 Welcome to Death by Southwest. It is Sunday, and we are recording episode 65. I did read that little teaser on Monday's bonus, but because a lot of people don't listen to the bonus, I'm going to read it again. So today we are headed to Las Vegas, Nevada, where the life of an ambitious young woman was cut tragically short in January of 2001 when she was found murdered in her ranch-style home. Was it a robbery gone wrong, a tragic accident, or something far more sinister? And because we don't really do a sense of place anymore, we're going to stick to that. Although I will say, I think it is important sometimes for especially people who listen, who aren't in the Southwest and kind of have no idea or maybe have never been to Arizona, Las Vegas, the places we talk about. I'm just going to give the brief population and kind of size.
Well, yeah, and also I was wondering, because a lot of times when people say Vegas, Las Vegas, we think of Las Vegas downtown, the Strip, or whoever does. And maybe this is in that vicinity, but also Las Vegas, there are
so much
plenty
more.
of suburbs and outskirts and
this
desert.
is not in a specific suburb, but it is outside of the Strip. It's close to the Strip. We have had episodes that I think our first episode ever actually took place in Las Vegas, but in kind of a suburb that was a distinct suburb, a distance from the Strip, like a 15 minutes or something.
The pool cleaner one?
Yeah. So this is a small neighborhood that is pretty close to the Strip. I never came across a name, so it was just kind of Las Vegas. But Las Vegas, for people who have not heard any previous episodes or may not know, it this year in 2024, it has a population of approximately 665,000 residents within city proper. While the larger metropolitan area known as Las Vegas Valley is around 2.9 million people. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
Elevation of Las Vegas is about 2,000 feet above sea level, not too different from Tucson. And the total area of the city is approximately 135 square miles, and I put everything in relation to Tucson because that's really the only stats I remember. And Tucson is around 200 and something square miles. So Las Vegas is just slightly smaller than Tucson. I also looked up the crime rate in Vegas because I would imagine in a place where like there are so many drunk people and drugs and party, it's like people are going there to party, that I would imagine there's probably a lot more crime than in other places.
Well, and I wonder if the stats are like Las Vegas proper, whatever, which I assume would be more like the downtown part,
Right. More so than kind of the outskirts of Las Vegas.
Well, sure. But I also wonder if the stats that you're about to read are for all of Las Vegas
That's a good
County,
point.
or because, I don't know. Either which way, go ahead.
And I guess I should have, unfortunately, this is going to be less meaningful because I didn't look up like anything to compare it to. So maybe we'll do that on the next episode. Because this will kind of mean nothing if I don't have anything to compare it to. But fluctuating crime rates over the recent years, the most recent data, the violent crime rate is around 7.5 incidents per 1,000 residents.
That seems high. I don't really have anything to compare it to.
And property crime rates of 32 incidents per 1,000 residents. Mm-hmm. Both of those rates put Vegas above the national average for most places.
That an important thing.
Yeah, it's more crime than most other places.
I wonder what other kinds of crime there are. Violent crime, property crime.
Financial crime?
Probably. I was about to say person-to-person crime, but I think that's violent.
It's violent. I would imagine that is violent crime.
Okay. That's for another one.
Yeah. So that's Vegas. And I guess this feels very obvious to me, but I do forget that there are people who listen in, Idaho who have never been to Vegas. And I'm not saying that in like a shitty way towards Idaho, just Idaho, Ohio, like wherever, Kentucky, people who have never really been to this part of the country and maybe have only seen Vegas on TV.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. I think people think of Vegas just as the Strip.
And it's true, because I did look up, I said, give me a one sentencer on Vegas. And that's exact. Of course, that's what people think, because it said Las Vegas is famous for vibrant nightlife, casinos, and entertainment options, earning it the nickname the entertainment capital of the world. Its economy heavily relies on tourism, with millions of visitors each year attracted to the shows, casinos, and conventions.
I wonder what it would say, whatever it is, if you put, because Vegas is kind of central south. Central South-ish? Mm-hmm. Let's just say it is. Sure. I might be wrong. What if you give me a one-sentence descriptor of Central South Nevada, or...
Oh, if it would say Las Vegas.
Of...
Right.
Because, of course, Google's telling you about Vegas.
Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny.
But that's also what it's known for, even if we're talking about that just region. It's sure there's a lot more than that, but that's what it's known for.
I don't have my phone in front of me, but Vegas. Yeah, it is Vegas. If you look at a map, here's Vegas. This is Nevada. It's very south, very, very south.
Southeast.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, southeast, south central, kind of. And I'm going to briefly gloss over this and we'll get into the story. But I had said in the bonus episode that I had checked our Instagram DMs finally after literally months the other day. And one of our longtime listeners had written in, and she I think lives in Safford. We had done an episode in Safford, and she was like, yeah, Safford is not near Flagstaff. She's like, you're way off.
Wait, I said it's near Flagstaff.
You did.
It's like an hour away.
And I said, yeah, of course it's near. I just was like, yeah, I don't know. I really didn't know. And I didn't look at a map, which is, probably why we get some back. That was my fault.
Well, but I thought were on the opposite end where you thought it was down here.
I did.
And were you correct?
I think we were both wrong.
What? Safford? It's not an hour away from Flag?
No, she said it's
thinking of then. Jesus.
Yeah, I'm gonna look. I'm gonna show you right now on the map. So Safford is, yeah. So if you look, that's Safford. Here's Phoenix. Here's Tucson.
Oh, shit. What am I thinking of?
So Flagstaff's way up here.
Yeah.
Here's Safford.
Clearly.
You were correct in that it is east.
Yeah. I was
very
thinking,
east.
Yeah, but I was so wrong.
It is northeast of us. So that was correct. I was thinking it was south of us, and it's not. If you look at a map of Arizona, Phoenix is
pretty much smack dab in the middle.
Kind of, yeah. And Flagstaff is very much to the north, pretty much right above Phoenix. And Tucson is to the south, a little bit east, but pretty much to the south of Phoenix.
Wow.
And
That's
Safford
helpful.
Is, I don't know, a click above Tucson and then very much to the east.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she was very nice about it. I really appreciated it because she sent laughing emojis, and she was like,
I'm all no, it's up there.
Well, and I totally agreed with you. I was like, yeah, I think you're right. And so she said, hi, that's not where we are. It was really funny though that you guys said that. And she she was very kind about it. It wasn't like, you fucking idiots, look at a map. That's not where Safford is. She was very sweet about it. So I appreciated that. And I wrote back and I said, you know what? Sometimes we get it wrong. That's just how it goes. And
well, for sure.
That's fine.
But it's kind of like the dress thing for you. I'm like, I was so certain it was like an hour southeast of Flag.
Blown away that it's not, huh? Yeah, not at all.
Not an idiot, but
No.
an idiot in my brain because I was so just like set on that.
Yeah, it's not.
Interesting.
But yeah,
Good to
so
know.
thank you. You know who you are, who sent us the message. I don't have my phone in front of me, and I never feel comfortable sharing people's names without asking permission. So, but thank you for sharing that. And you know, we're always looking to improve, guys. So we'll look at a map. I'll look at a map next time.
Or not.
Or maybe. All right. So we're going to jump into today's story. And there's a bug on my computer. We're going to focus first on, her name is Tzatzi Sanchez, but it is spelled Tzatzi, like tzatziki almost.
Tzai.
A-T.
Tzatzi. Oh, okay.
Tzatzi. Tzatzi Sanchez. She was born May 12th, 1973. She grew up in a pretty prominent family in Mexico City. Her parents were business owners. They had money. She went to good schools in Mexico City, pretty affluent. And for college, her parents really wanted her to continue with getting a good education, so they decided they were going to send her to the States. She went to UNLV, University of Las Vegas, to study hotel management. And
that's a big,
huge
school there.
Huge. It's probably one of the best in the country if you're going to study hotel management, to go to UNLV. And so her dad wanted to make sure that she was like safe and comfortable being in Las Vegas. He was a little concerned. So they bought a house for her to live in a nice suburban neighborhood, just right kind of outside of campus. She eventually took on a roommate that she became friends with named Carlos Rene. She was a good student. She had a good job waitressing, lived in a nice house. Things were going really well for her. But she was lonely. She had recently broken up with a boyfriend and was looking to find someone to form a deeper connection with in a relationship. And she was confiding in her friend Tony about this. And in the spring of 2000, she met a woman named Marcella Whaley at a Las Vegas club where she was waitressing.
So in 2000, she was 26, 27.
Yeah.
She was born. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And Tzatzi was really drawn in. Marcella had kind of a big personality, very boisterous, very outgoing, very friendly. So now we're going to talk about Marcella. So like Tzatzi, Marcella also grew up in a prominent Mexican family, but in a different part of Mexico, in Durango, Mexico. Her eldest brother was actually a high-ranking member of the Mexican government. She came from money, similar to Tzatzi. She was in Mexico pursuing a degree in broadcast journalism. She was very interested in media. She was interested in being in front of the camera. And 23, 24, she was really focused, like laser focused on this career and doing whatever she could to advance her career. And that was until she fell in love with a woman. And this kind of blew up her life because her parents were very traditional Mexican family. They refused to accept that she was in love with a woman, that she was gay. They wouldn't acknowledge it.
Is this woman is not yet Tzatzi?
No, she's not. She has not met Tzatzi
right,
yet.
okay.
Yeah, we're kind of backtracking on Marcella. So Marcella met a woman named Kimberlyn Estrada, who was actually only 17. Marcella was about 23 at this time. Kimberlyn was 17. We're in about 1994, 1995-ish. And so Marcella really has a lot going for her in Mexico. She is pursuing this broadcast journalism career. She comes from a prominent family. She's in love with someone, but she can't be herself totally. Her parents refuse to acknowledge that she's gay.
Did she come out, perhaps?
She did to them, and they were like, no.
Yeah.
Nope. So eventually Marcella and Kimberlyn, who are now dating, decide to move to the States because they can't really live their honest life in Mexico.
Mexico is a very strong Catholic country.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, rough place
and especially
to come
like
out.
This was her brother was in the Mexican government. Like they are prominent in the
They're
news.
in the in the front-facing world.
Right. And so they were just not okay with this. So Marcella and Kimberlyn decide to move to California. They live there for a while and then end up moving to Las Vegas around 1998-ish. It was a very exciting time for them. They were young. They were in love. They're exploring not only a new city, but a new country. So it was an exciting time, but this move to the U.S. came with some trade-offs. It meant that Marcella kind of had to set her career ambitions in broadcast journalism aside because she had been pursuing that in Mexico. That doesn't really translate when you move to the States.
Also, this is just an assumption that English was not her first language.
Right.
Maybe she spoke it quite fluently.
She did, but still.
Yeah, that's a factor, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Or a challenge, a barrier in breaking into American media.
Well, and also you're coming from a very prominent, wealthy family with connections that is potentially helping get you into this. And then you come to America where you have no connections.
Sure.
So she had to kind of halt that ambition and just take a job to support herself. So when they moved to Las Vegas, she got a job operating a forklift at a warehouse in the northeast part of Las Vegas. Kimberlyn, her girlfriend, also got a job there doing something else in the warehouse. And for the next 2 years or so, the couple spent their days working at the warehouse together, and they spent their nights really exploring kind of the nightlife scene in Las Vegas. Almost every night after work, they would go out, go clubbing. They became kind of regulars at this Latin restaurant / club that was at the time very popular with the Latino community in Las Vegas.
Do you have the name of that restaurant?
I do not.
Damn it.
Yeah, I know. This restaurant happened to also be where Tzatzi worked as a waitress.
Gotcha.
So this is where Marcella and Kimberlyn met Tzatzi and kind of got to know her. This was spring of 2000. Tzatzi at this point is 27 years old. She wasn't dating anybody. She was still feeling like really lonely and looking for a deeper connection with someone. And she kind of found that with Marcella and Kimberlyn. Marcella at this point is about 29. Kimberlyn's about 23. So they're all in their 20s. Both of them coming from Mexico, like Tzatzi, it felt very, very homey to her. They started talking, hanging out, spending a lot of time together, and Marcella and Tzatzi grew particularly close. Marcella was, even though she had been for years at this point, about 5 years, 6 years with Kimberlyn, she found herself very attracted to Tzatzi and was having a really hard time hiding her feelings. She was always flirting and even trying to kind of get physical when Kimberlyn wasn't around. She would try and put the moves on Tzatzi, kind of seducing her, really. And Tzatzi had always dated men. She had never dated women. But she was feeling really lonely. And so all this attention that she was getting from Marcella, this attention, this flirting, she was finding it kind of hard to resist. She had, tried to go out on dates and tried to meet men and just wasn't connecting with anyone, but she was really connecting with Marcella. And so then throw in all of this kind of attention, flirting, and seducing from Marcella. Finally, Tzatzi kind of gave in and they ended up getting involved in a sexual relationship together. But this obviously had consequences because Marcella had for multiple years at this point been with Kimberlyn. Not only been with her, but they moved to a different country together. So they had been through a lot and been together since Kimberlyn was 17.
Well, it could, as of right now, it could have huge consequences, but I don't know how those play out.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was secretive at this point. Marcella and Tzatzi were keeping their kind of newfound romantic relationship secret from Kimberlyn.
I imagine that would have been difficult because this sounds like a place that Marcella and Kimberlyn went to often. Mm-hmm. And so once Marcella and Tzatzi started this whatever sexual romantic connection, they're going to have to hide it.
Right.
Makes it awkward. Of their ability. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were hiding it. until one day Marcella was on the phone with Tzatzi, and Kimberlyn walked in and heard them on the phone and heard that it was not just a friendly conversation. It was more. And she got very angry. They had a huge fight, and Marcella ended up breaking up with Kimberlyn. And she went and moved in with Tzatzi in Tzatzi's house that her parents had bought her.
Oh, Marcella did.
Yeah, Marcella
Okay.
did. Yeah. So this was around the summer of 2000. Marcella and Tzatzi were living in the master bedroom in Tzatzi's home. Carlos, her roommate, still had one of the other bedrooms. There were still other bedrooms in the house. It was a very nice house.
That's also a quick from going to kind of a hidden relationship affair situation to
Living in the same bedroom
now I've
together.
been broken up with and I've got to move in.
She did the breaking up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Marcella was very quickly falling in love with Tzatzi, but she also felt really guilty about what she did to Kimberlyn. She felt bad. Her and Kimberlyn had been together for years. And since Kimberlyn was literally a kid, she was 17. Oh, Indiana feels sad about it too. So Marcella's feeling like all of this guilt. This was essentially, Kimberlyn was kind of her family. They were at first the only people each other had in this
Oh my
new
gosh,
country.
yeah. They're totally transforming their lives.
Yes.
Going through, I imagine, hardships of
Yes.
coming to this country, citizenship, green card, whatever they had to do, work visas, so many challenges.
So many. And they did it all together. And then all of a sudden, Marcella just like left her, moved in with this new woman, Tzatzi. So it started weighing on her. And she one day decided to ask Tzatzi for a big favor. She said, I feel really guilty about how I treated Kimberlyn. Do you think that we could allow Kimberlyn to move in to the other extra bedroom here?
I mean,
She could be
lovely
the fourth
sentiment,
roommate.
but
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Also, I don't know where you're going to go with this.
Sure.
But lovely sentiment. Not a great idea in my mind, but who knows? Everyone's different. And if Kimberlyn accepts this, what? Either she's got like, I don't know what.
No one else in the United States, really. She has no one in this country, really.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, like she came here with Marcella. We're together here in the United States for years together. Lived in California, then moved to Las Vegas. We're there in Las Vegas for 2 years before they met Tzatzi.
Yeah, of course. She's trying to get, if she moves in with them, she's just trying to kind of quote unquote survive. So
Right.
that's most important.
Right.
I'm coming from a place of like, ooh, do
Bad
I want to live
idea.
with my ex and their new partner?
No.
Of course not. And also, if I am struggling to pay rent or find a place to live,
Right.
you're damn right I'll move in with you.
And that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Tzatzi agreed, was very kind, and like felt bad.
Yeah.
Also felt bad for Kimberlyn and what Marcella had done to her, and kind of left her in the lurch and said, "Fine, yeah, let's let her move in." So I also do think, and this is as I was learning about this story, this is kind of just where my mind went, is that I think that Marcella was probably feeling so much guilt that it was then impacting her relationship with Tzatzi. And Tzatzi thought, if we can eliminate this guilt and let Kimberlyn move in, then maybe things will be easier between us. And that was true for a minute. Like after Kimberlyn moved in, Marcella's guilt kind of alleviated. She was a little bit more carefree. Her and Tzatzi's relationship seemed to really take off then.
I'd like to know, like, what did they, I mean, I imagine they all three of them interacted to
Sure.
some extent because they shared a kitchen, a living space, different bedrooms, sure, but they saw each other, interacted, and I bet it sounds like in the beginning at least it went semi well.
At this point in my understanding of this story, yes, it seemed to be, going decently. Tzatzi felt like this really helped Marcella kind of let go of this guilt. They were able to focus on each other. They all were kind of friendly. Things were going really well. And Tzatzi was like, finally, her loneliness was gone. She didn't only have one roommate, she now had 3 roommates and a relationship that she hadn't expected. And, she was saving money. She was going to school. Things were working out really well. until the morning of January 15th, 2001. On the morning of January 15th, 2001, 911 dispatch in Las Vegas gets a call from a man in a neighborhood saying, there's a guy running around my neighborhood bleeding and yelling for help. And I don't know what's going on, but you need to send people here. Like, we need help. So officers rush to the address. They have no idea what they're going to come upon. I actually read a bunch about like 911 dispatch in Las Vegas. Like the calls they get are just so outrageous. Everything from
I can't imagine.
common to just crazy, like outrageous. So,
and they have to kind of weed. No, maybe they don't have to weed through them. They have to take them all seriously, even if
they do. And that's kind of like what, like, officers were like, okay, a man who's bleeding, running around a neighborhood, like, they don't know what to expect, but they're going kind of with an open mind, knowing that it could be serious or absolutely nonsense, because that's kind of, the calls run the gamut when they respond. So they hurry, they get to the address very quickly. And when they get there, they find two injured young men. Both are a little bit beaten up and bloody. And the young men, both men, say to the officers, our roommate, Tzatzi, she's been attacked by intruders and she needs medical attention. Please go in there. Please go in the house. They're outside, these two men.
One, I imagine, is perhaps Carlos.
Yes.
I don't know who the other is.
Right.
Cool.
So the officers go into the house. They go into the bedroom, the master bedroom that, you're correct, one of the men was Carlos, directed them to go to. And they walked into a disastrous, horrifically gruesome scene. They saw a woman in the bed. She was kind of on her side, but almost face down. There was a fabric in her mouth and then a scarf wrapped tightly around her face, keeping that fabric in her mouth. Her hands were bound behind her back with a electrical cord that had been cut from one of the lamps in the room. There was significant trauma to her face. One of the officers estimated that at least she had been hit in the face at least 24 times with a lot of force. The bed, the sheets were soaked in blood. Her sweatpants had been very clearly ripped from her body. They described it as just a grotesque scene that even several seasoned detectives who were arriving on the scene were very, like, had trouble handling.
They had to take a moment, a hot minute. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the first thing, I watched an interview with one of the initial detectives on the scene. He said, my first thought was like, why? Which is always the question. And that's kind of been prominent in a lot of episodes, like the motive, which I listened to a recent episode of ours and you were like, well, duh, the motive's always the question, which is true. It is. And this detective was like, why? Like, what has happened? And he then said, this is a direct quote, he said, there's always a connection in almost every single murder case. Either your victim knows the killer or your victim knows the person that sent the killer. There is very rarely not a connection. It's like so random crimes are so much more rare than I think most people think.
It's most often 1 degree or 2 degrees of separation.
Right. So detectives were very anxious to speak to the two men who were at the scene, hoping to get some answers. And so the paramedics kind of tended to Carlos and the friend, the other man was Tony, who was a friend of Carlos's and a friend of Tzatzi's. That is, if you recall, kind of earlier on in this, I had said that Tzatzi was complaining to her friend Tony about being lonely.
Yep.
Yeah. So they were all friends. So while the paramedics are kind of tending to Tony and Carlos's wounds, the detectives decide to take a closer look at the home. The home itself, not the master bedroom, but the home was kind of a mess. It looked like there had been a party. There were beer bottles. There were plates stacked up in the sink. The trash was overflowing with empty alcohol bottles and plates of food. It seemed very obvious there had been a party there. The room where they found Tzatzi, the master bedroom, it was also kind of a mess, but differently than the rest of the house. The rest of the house, it was like there was a party, nobody cleaned up yet. The bedroom had been clearly ransacked, so the contents of her purse were spilled across the floor. Drawers were open. It looked like somebody had been looking for something. They also found a used condom in the room, which indicated in their minds sex, sexual assault or sex. And at this point, they're thinking there's no way that she doesn't know whoever attacked her and killed her because it's so brutal, which we've heard in multiple episodes. Like, the more brutal it is, it indicates something personal.
Which is really, I could
Awful.
go down a deep dive of that.
I know.
Of like, that tracks, and also it doesn't, or it tracks in like a real effed up way in my mind.
So that same detective that had said there's always a connection, he also said random crimes on individuals are extremely, extremely rare. You see them in the news and stuff because they're highlighted because they are so rare. But most murders involve the victim knowing the killer or knowing who hired the killer or sent the killer or being connected to the killer in some way.
It's not just like, well, I think what we see in the media is like Dahmer, who goes on dates, which I don't know if you could consider that him knowing a person. He goes,
kind of, yeah.
I mean, but he can go on a date and then murder someone. So like,
more
there's
than
not previous
breaking into
history.
somebody's house randomly.
Oh yeah, I think that's quite
rare.
It seems quite rare.
And the same detective also said, in our minds at this point, to the best of our knowledge, our number one suspects, number one and number two, are Carlos and Tony. They were there.
Yeah.
So,
but also one of them was running around saying, I need help, or there's been awfulness.
Sure. So the detectives speak after the paramedics clear Carlos and Tony. They speak to them. Carlos explains to detectives that him and Tony had a barbecue at the house the night before. And then they went out to a bar. They had told their Tzatzi that, like, we're not going to come home. We're going to be out all night. We'll be back tomorrow. They were going to stay with one of their friends. But at the bar, Carlos got too drunk, and Tony was like, we cannot stay in this bar. We're going to get kicked out. I'm going to take you home. And Tony drove Carlos home back to him and Tzatzi's house. Once home, Tony, helped Carlos into his room. Carlos fell asleep in the bed. Tony fell asleep on the floor. Neither of them were supposed to be there, though. According to Tony, they got home early in the morning and not too long after they got home because Carlos is passed out drunk. Tony's drunk, but aware of what's happening in the home. He said after they got home, Marcella and Kimberlyn left to go to their job early in the morning, 5, 6. So Tony
Where's
and
Tzatzi?
Tzatzi's asleep
Okay.
in the master bedroom.
Gotcha.
Tony and Carlos pass out in Carlos's bedroom until they were awakened by the sound of a bottle. Tony said, I was awoken by the sound of a bottle crashing off over someone's head. And he startled himself. He woke up what?
How did he know it was over someo's head? A bottle being broken.
Yeah. And when he kind of came, woke up, he realized that, well, first of all, he saw 2 men in Carlos's bedroom, one of them pointing a gun in his face and realizing that a bottle had just been broken over Carlos's head. And the 2 men standing in the room said to Carlos and Tony, if you comply with everything we tell you to do, no one will get hurt. They cut cords off of the lamps in the room, tie Tony's hands up, both of them, and then they threw a blanket over their head and said, don't move, don't get up, and don't make a fucking sound.
Ooh, I'm thinking about this is so silly, but Carlos, he's the one that had to kind of be taken home from the bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was too tipsy.
He's probably still drunk.
He's feeling, maybe he's still drunk, yeah.
He's
Because I was
feeling
thinking,
awful.
God, either he's still drunk or he's feeling terrible.
Terrible.
I don't actually feel sad because I'm guessing he didn't die, but
we'll see.
We'll find out.
So Tony and Carlos sitting, their hands are tied. They have a blanket thrown over their heads. They're sitting there okay, there's 2 men with a gun in the house. We have no idea what's going on. Suddenly, Tony said he heard Tzatzi crying out. And then he heard one of the men say to her, if you make a single sound, I will go kill your roommates in the other room. And he said she didn't make much noise after that. After what felt like forever, Tony heard the front door close. He heard the men leaving. And he was able to maneuver his hands out of his binding. And he ran to Tzatzi's, he untied Carlos, ran to Tzatzi's room, she had a sheet over her. He lifted the sheet up and cried out. He said, Carlos, she's unconscious. She's unconscious. We have to get help. So his phone was in his car in the driveway. So he ran outside to get his phone, dialed 911.
I laughed because he had to deal with his friend, bring him in, and like, of course, that's understandable that he left his
phone in the car.
car.
He forgot it, and so he ran out to his car, got the phone, dialed 911. The call failed. He tried again. The call failed. He threw his phone. He just started wandering around the neighborhood like, I need help. Somebody call for help. A neighbor was outside and he said, I need your phone. I need you to call 911. And so that's the neighbor that called 911 and said, there's a man bleeding who's yelling at me to call 911 that he needs help.
I don't know what kind of phone he had. Also, this was early 2000s, right?
2001, yeah. No iPhone at this point.
Well, I was going to talk shit about an iPhone, and I love iPhone. But also, like, if I'm in a real bind, to say the least, like, if I'm in a panic mode, it's not easy.
No, it's not.
And also, sometimes when I don't want to get the emergency line, I backwards press the buttons, and there it is.
Yeah, like, I know. It should be easier.
I have thought about that all the time when the emergency or it's an emergency pops up. Like, if it was an actual emergency, I don't think I'd be able. Hopefully, but they don't make it easy.
Well, I literally right now, I know that there's something you can hit on your phone that will immediately get it. I couldn't tell you what it is.
Me neither.
And I'm not in an emergency.
Right.
So if I was, there's no fucking way.
The one thing I know is, and I sometimes
if struggle
to turn off my phone. I forget which button, but you hold it. But you have to hold it for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It should be easier. iPhone, if you're listening.
I also understand if it's easier, everyone's going to hit it in their pocket.
That's true. I do think it used to be easier because I remember I used to, when I would go with Henry in Atlanta, we go walking at night. I feel safe with him, but I still always have my phone in my hand, like ready in case something happened. And I don't remember what the buttons were, but it's a couple of times I was like, Jesus, it's so easy to hit it. Like I accidentally hit it. It's not anymore. It's been made less easy. There's got to be a middle ground, right?
I wonder if you could tell Siri to call.
I think you probably could. If you have that enabled.
Yeah, I've never used Siri, but
I don't have it enabled on my phone because I don't. Because you barely you like say something close to Siri and it pops up like, "Whoa, I didn't catch that. Can you tell me what again?"
God, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's a different story though.
So this neighbor calls 911. That brings us to where we are. So police are talking to Carlos. He explained that he shares the house with Tzatzi, Marcella, and Marcella's ex, Kimberlyn. Police were like, can you elaborate on this? And Carlos said, well, Tzatzi and Marcella had been sharing the master bedroom, and Kimberlyn was staying in one of the guest rooms like myself. But recently our situation changed. Tzatzi and Kimberlyn began kind of connecting on this emotional level. And Tzatzi told Marcella, I don't want to be with you anymore. I'm falling in love with Kimberlyn. And we're going to be in a relationship. So you can either choose to move into Kimberlyn's room, the guest room, or you can leave.
Wait, so
Yep. It was like musical beds.
Back. Yep. She went back to Kimberlyn.
Well, she had never been with Kimberlyn.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Marcella and Kimberlyn were together.
Right.
Marcella broke up with Kimberlyn.
And went with Tzatzi.
And then moved Kimberlyn in. And then Tzatzi and Kimberlyn started to fall in love. And Tzatzi was like, Marcella, we're done. I need you to move out of my master bedroom. You take Kimberlyn's room. I'm moving Kimberlyn into my bedroom. So they just swapped. And this is Carlos's recounting this to the police. And so he said, Tzatzi broke up with Marcella. Marcella moved into Kimberlyn's room. Kimberlyn moved into the master bedroom with Tzatzi. And Carlos said, Marcella kind of like struggled with this at first, but in the past week or so, this was recently. So in the past week or so, I think that Marcella's like really gotten comfortable with it. That's why we had the barbecue, Carlos said. He said Marcella kind of was not happy about this at first, but then the other day she said, guys, let's have a barbecue. Let's have a party to celebrate that like we're all getting along and like you guys are
The normalcy of it all. Let's normalize it and be okay.
She was determined to kind of show everyone that, like, she was okay with this. I can move into the guest room. It's okay. And she went as far as to invite several girls that she was interested in to the party, and was very openly kind of making out with quite intensely, I guess, in front of Tzatzi and Kimberlyn, this random woman. And Tzatzi and Kimberlyn were like, great. Well, then she actually is okay with it. Yay, this is fantastic. She's moving on. We're moving on. Good. So after speaking to Carlos and Tony, police were like, okay, we actually don't think you're suspects anymore. We kind of believe you. They were both like very evidently shaken up.
Well, also, that neighbor, I bet, could attest to that.
Yeah. They were very scared. There was no hesitation in their story. There was nothing to indicate that they were kind of lying or creating this scene. But detectives were like, but why did they kill Tzatzi? But Carlos and Tony were allowed to live. This is the one kind of sticking point that they just were like, we believe them, but
they didn't kill them. So, or as we stand right now, they didn't kill them. So maybe whoever did, where we're at right now, had a reason to kill one and not the other. Or maybe it just was what happened.
Well,
right?
Yes, it could be any of those things, but detectives are not ruling out that, like, Carlos and Tony killed Tzatzi and then just are making up this story. Because in detectives' minds, they were like, it doesn't really make sense that they only killed the female and they left these two men alive.
Okay, I see you.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So they're not ruling them out. They're keeping in the back of their mind, Carlos and Tony could have killed Tzatzi and staged this whole thing. Like, really faked it. We don't know. So the police were like, well, can you describe these two men who intruded into your home? And they're like, it happened so quickly, we really didn't get a good look at them. We know they were both Hispanic.
Well, I have a question there. Because this was early morning. So before you had said that last part, I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. We did also panic situation. It's fine. You were half asleep or all asleep,
a little bit drunk.
You didn't get a good look at them. Understandable, whether it was dark or light.
Right.
Also, then when you come back and say, and we're certain they're both Hispanic.
Carlos and Tony are both Hispanic. And from what I gather, they were saying that based on the men speaking Indiana. Christ. So Tony said, they also did say a few things. Both men said, where are the drugs? And Tony responded and said, what drugs? Tony was like, I don't know what drugs they're referring to. But Tony said, in my mind, I thought maybe Tzatzi's involved in something that, like, I'm unaware of.
Sure.
Some type of drug scene that nobody knew about. And so he said the men also kept asking, where's the safe? Where's the money? Where's the drugs?
That's what I was wondering. What did they rummage through and take or not take but look for?
So detectives were like, okay, they take all this into account. And they're like, okay, we don't really think Carlos and Tony are to blame for this, but, like, we're not ruling them out. And we're also not willing to rule out the other roommates. Where are they? At work.
Are they?
They were. So they call Carlos was like, here's where Marcella and Kimberlyn work. They call police call the warehouse, get in touch with them, say, you need to come home right now. Kimberlyn and Marcella both leave work. They arrive home. The detectives inform them of what happened. They are both noticeably very upset. Marcella is pacing back and forth. She has her hands on the sides of her head. She keeps saying, "Que paso? Que paso? What happened? What happened?" And Kimberlyn was in shock. She was kind of just like not moving, not speaking. She just like couldn't seem to comprehend that Tzatzi was dead. Detectives try to question them and start talking to them in the driveway at this point. Marcella is now going back and forth between Spanish and English. She's barely making sense. Her thoughts are kind of like, look, what happened? What do you mean? Like, they can't even really understand what she's saying. So they realize, like, okay, these women need a moment. So why don't you guys sit down, calm down, and we're going to come back to this because we're not getting anything useful here. So they leave the women and they go back into the home, detectives, to see, like, was anything actually taken? They
How do you know if something's taken if you didn't know it was there?
I think that they brought one of the women with them in the house to try and take their mind off of like, we need to question
Just
you
like
about
look
the death.
at this closet.
Right. Right.
It's
Do you
all
notice
rummaged,
anything?
but was there any major thing here that's not here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they do find that there was a computer on Tzatzi's desk in her bedroom that was missing. There was a Cartier watch and a very expensive necklace that was missing, a video camera that was missing, and a few other electronic devices, all from Tzatzi's bedroom that were all missing. They also discovered that Tzatzi's car is missing. So it turns out that the suspects, the two men, hopped in her white Pathfinder to flee the scene.
They probably picked her keys off
Yep.
the
Yep.
hook by the garage
Sure
or
did.
whatever.
Yep. So this was a very helpful piece of the investigation because the detectives immediately put out a bolo for the Pathfinder. Around this time, the ME has finished her report. The official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation.
That fabric.
And the ME also said that Tzatzi never saw the attack coming. For whatever reason, she could tell that she was woken up by being beaten in the face, which is just unthinkable to me. She also confirmed that Tzatzi was raped. And she also, in the report, made it very clear that these men wanted to make sure that she suffered. They wanted to send a message. This was a painful, long, drawn-out death.
Is this connected to her family? I know we're not there yet.
So detectives find no physical evidence linking Carlos or Tony to the attack. There was actually very little physical evidence at all. They also confirmed that Kimberlyn and Marcella were at work at the time of the murder. Marcella and Kimberlyn are both on video, clocking in, driving the forklift. It is all documented.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. It was confirmed or documentation or something that she was raped.
Mm-hmm.
But at least right now, we don't have
DNA.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that's being sent
We do not
off.
at this point.
Okay.
So investigators are like, shit, we really have our work cut. There's not a lot of physical evidence other than two Latino males. That's really all we got. They were kind of thinking maybe the drug angle because the assailants kept asking, where are the drugs? Where's the safe? So they thought like maybe Tzatzi is involved in like some drug ring that no one knew about. But as soon as they kind of started going down that path, that really fizzled out because everyone they spoke to that knew Tzatzi, that worked with her, that went to school with her, like her reputation and her lifestyle was
She's not
clean.
involved in drugs. Yeah.
She was a good student. She was very, very dedicated to her classes. She never missed work. She was on time. She was honest. Like there's nothing to suggest any type of dark anything.
Which, of course, in my mind, there still could be.
Sure.
She could just be on top, just
Sure.
like she's on top of school and work and this and that. This
Yeah.
could just be another
She
thing.
keeps it very well hidden, perhaps. Yeah. But at least on the surface,
Sure, they
this
have
is
no-
not it. There's no indication.
tangible reason
Right.
to
Right.
deeper dive on that.
Right. So detectives are really at this point now like, well, we got to find this car. This is what's going to help. So as soon as the bolo for the white Pathfinder was broadcast on the nightly news, the tips started flooding in. Just so many tips, which, I mean, I feel like that's the case in many situations. One particular tip came in from an anonymous source. He refused to say his name, but he said, I know where the white Pathfinder is parked. I work with a man that may have taken this car because I saw one of my fellow employees drop this car off in a parking lot nearby where I work. And when he came into work, I asked him about it, and he was bragging to me that he killed a woman. He showed me the gloves that he wore, black leather gloves, and he showed me that there was blood on the inside of the cloth lining. He also described beating a woman and sexually assaulting her and then strangling her. And the cops were like, okay, who are you talking about? And the anonymous tipster said, it's a coworker of mine. He's 23 years old. His name is Luis Barroso. There were dozens of tips, but this one obviously seemed very, that's what happened. So this seems like, how do you know this much? Either you're the person who did it or your tip is correct. So they decide to check it out. They go to where this anonymous tipster said the car was located. Sure enough, they pull up. There's the car. And there was even some of the missing belongings in the car. And as they're examining the car, they're going through it, looking like, prints and this and that and all the things. They realize, like, wait a second. We're like half a block from where Marcella and Kimberlyn work. The warehouse is like right down the street. So, and this really bothers me that I couldn't figure this out, but they somehow figured out that the anonymous tipster, maybe he became unanonymous, I don't know. He worked at that warehouse with Kimberlyn and Marcella.
Maybe they tracked the phone number or something.
And Luis Barroso.
Uh-huh.
So they're like, okay, well, maybe this is all true. It's all very speculation at this point, but maybe this is true. But if it is Luis Barroso, that's only one. There were two. Yeah. So who's the other one? And if Luis works with Marcella and Kimberlyn, maybe they're in danger as well.
Oh, I was thinking maybe they're involved.
Well, that too. But at this point, police are thinking maybe they're going to be his next victims.
I would be interviewing every single male that works there because it was two males, right? Yeah.
So at this point, they're like, fuck, anything's possible. So, of course, they wanted to talk to Marcella and Kimberlyn, but they also wanted to talk to Luis, and they also wanted to make sure Marcella and Kimberlyn were safe. So they called Kimberlyn, and they said, like, where's Marcella? We'd like to speak to both of you. Because they never really were able, remember at the scene, the women were both too shaken. They never really did.
They said, let's give them a moment, a break.
Right. And so this is, this is about a day later. And so they call Kimberlyn and they're like, yeah, we'd like to talk to you and Marcella. Can you guys come in? And Kimberlyn says, well, I haven't seen or spoken to Marcella since the morning of the murder when we spoke to you in the driveway. Like, I don't know where she is. And they're like, well, that's odd. But our best chances of finding Marcella are to talk to you. So why don't you come in and talk to us? Before she comes in, she says, I don't know where Marcella is, but wherever she is, she's driving my car. She took my car.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. Last night she packed up my car, cleaned out her bank account, and left. And I didn't even know. Like, police found out that she cleaned out the bank account. Kimberlyn didn't know that. Sure. But she said, like, she packed up her stuff, left without me knowing. And after the fact, I wake up, my car's gone, her stuff is gone. And police then find out her bank account is cleaned out.
Out of nowhere.
Bye. She's gone. So police said, okay, come in. Please talk to us. They put out a bolo on Kimberlyn's car and Marcella. When Kimberlyn comes in, they first ask her about Luis Barroso. And she says, yeah, I know who he is, but like, I don't know him. I know he works at the warehouse. I don't know him. Marcella knows him a little bit, though. I've seen them in recent weeks. They've been talking a lot. And so then they press her a little bit about her relationship with Tzatzi. And Kimberlyn says, yeah, me and Tzatzi, we began to bond because Tzatzi was having trouble with Marcella. And we bonded because I dated Marcella for years. So like I could relate to what Tzatzi was going through. Marcella was apparently very controlling and obsessed with not allowing Tzatzi to do anything without her permission. She wouldn't let her go anywhere, talk to anybody without Marcella like approving. And so Tzatzi began confiding in Kimberlyn. Like, I can't handle this. It's very difficult. And Kimberlyn understood because she had dealt with something similar with Marcella. Mm-hmm. So that kind of confiding in Kimberlyn turned pretty quickly more intimate.
It connected them.
Mm-hmm. And so Kimberlyn told the detectives by December, Tzatzi broke up with Marcella and me and her began openly dating. And according to Kimberlyn, unlike Carlos said like she was upset, but she got over it pretty quickly. Kimberlyn said Marcella did not take this well. She said whenever me and Tzatzi would show any kind of affection towards each other in like the main parts of the house, Marcella would growl at us and tell us to quit it, cut it out, or even threaten us sometimes. She was very angry. She started staying in her room almost 24 hours a day. Like, she almost never came out of her room. And that went on for days, weeks, until a few days before Tzatzi's murder. Kimberlyn said Marcella finally came out. We were all kind of sitting in the family room. Marcella came out and we were like, okay, what's going to happen? Like, maybe she's okay now. She seemed okay. They hung out a little bit. Things seemed to kind of smooth over. And then a day or two later, they were all sitting in the family room and Marcella said, I'm going to play a game. And they were like, okay. And she said, I want each of you to tell me what you think the most horrific, terrible way to die would be. What do you think? I want to hear your like most awful being murdered story. And they were like, this is weird, but like, fine. She's finally out here hanging out. Let's just play along. So they did. They each answered her question. And Tzatzi's answer involved being tied up, raped, and strangled.
Yeah, I mean, that seems pretty goddamn awful.
Yeah. So Kimberlyn said shortly after this kind of weird conversation, Marcella was really feeling like she seemed to be relaxed and she seemed totally okay with their relationship. And then she suggested, let's have a party. Let's have a party.
That's
to just
the part
celebrate.
I was still thinking about of like, she got a pep in her step.
Yep, she sure did. And detectives at this point, after interviewing Kimberlyn, are kind of like, well, motive. Here's the motive. But she has a rock solid alibi. She's at work. It's on camera. Plus, the assailants were men, so it's not fucking Marcella.
Well, it could be Marcella's confidants or close cousins or friends or
Anybody.
Yep.
So detectives at this point are like, well, we got to talk to this Luis Barroso. So they head to his house. He lives there with his parents and his brother. They have a search warrant. And his brother answers the door. They give him the search warrant. He says, Luis is at work, but yeah, come in, search his room. So they search his room. They're not finding anything. And then they find a video camera and they open it up. They flip open the thing and they press play to like see what's on it. And it's like a bunch of dudes hanging out, playing video games, joking around. And then all of a sudden it cuts to this video of Tzatzi and her roommates, Carlos, Marcella, Kimberlyn, having Thanksgiving dinner. And detectives realize, like, this is not Luis's camera. This is Tzatzi's camera.
And we're in late November, getting closer to January, perhaps?
Yes, it was the recent November. They also then found bloody gloves in Luis's bedroom.
Oh, I was
So
like, on
now-
the camera. Okay, I gotcha.
Now, they haven't tested the blood yet, but they're like, okay, Tzatzi's camera, bloody glove. Like, we're here. This is it. We'll test this, but assuming this is her blood, we can tie him to the crime. So they questioned Luis's brother. They said, like, can you tell us about the recent morning of January 15th? You know, we're only a couple days out here. And he said, yeah, on the morning of January 15th, Luis came home driving a white Pathfinder.
Oy.
And he had an old friend with him that I hadn't seen in years, but he was an old friend of his. His name was Obed Marroquin. And investigators were like, okay, let's go. So they get arrest warrants for Luis and Obed and search warrants for Obed's house and both of their car, like everything. They get all the search warrants needed. They go to the warehouse, arrest Luis. They have enough at this point to arrest him.
Sure.
He immediately lawyers up and says, I'm not speaking. Then they go to Obed's house. They serve the search warrant. They search his home before arresting him. They find Tzatzi's computer in Obed's bedroom, and they immediately arrest him. So at this point, they're like, okay, well, there's no question. Obed and Luis killed Tzatzi. Done. But we have a ton of questions, like why? And where is Marcella? Marcella's still missing. Nobody's seen her, heard from her. They can't get in touch with her. Luis is refusing to talk. So detectives are like, we have kind of an open shut case, but like, we'd like to know more. Obed is kind of their last ditch effort to try and get answers before having to like take this to trial. Obed opens up immediately. He says, this is how it happened. Marcella started flirting with Luis out of nowhere. Now, I will have to post a picture of this because everything I read said Luis was not an attractive man. And I was like, well, isn't that kind of like subjective?
Subjective, yeah. But there are some objectively attractive or even objectively good looking, I'll just say. Maybe you're not attracted. What are you going to say?
I think if he had a glowing personality, perhaps he's not a
You're saying he's objectively not attractive.
Yes. Marcella was to most people probably pretty attractive. A fair
No, I wasn't going to question that.
Oh, okay.
I understand that. I was going to say like maybe what's his face had something, did he have money? Did he have drugs? Did he have connections?
Perhaps. We don't know
or
that
maybe
at this
they
point.
just had a soul connection.
Perhaps. It seemed out of place, though, that she was so heavily out of nowhere kind of flirting with Luis, who is objectively a not attractive man working in a
so you're
warehouse.
letting me know that there's a underlying reason.
There you go.
I mean,
Yes.
just say it for me.
That's it. So, and this was Luis was like, why is this woman openly flirting with me? He felt very lucky. He was like, amazing. I don't know what I've done to deserve this, but yeah. He thought like, okay, this happened for like days. And he was thinking like, maybe, I don't know why, but maybe she likes me. Maybe we're going to have a relationship. And then she said, I have a favor.
I need your help is
I need
what I
your
was going
help.
to say.
Yep. And she said, I need you to kill my ex-girlfriend. And he was like, no. She's like, just hear me out. He said, okay. And she says, meet me here later. I'll tell you. I'll explain. He's like, okay. And he brings his friend Obed with him later. He's like, I'll hear her out. Let's see. She tells Luis and Obed that the house where her ex-girlfriend lives, there's motorcycles, drugs, a safe full of money. You can take whatever you want. And that's not all I'm going to give you. I've never had sex with a man. I've been gay my whole life. But if you do this, you can have my virginity. I will have sex with you if you do this.
This is just my initial thought, and my brain could go to a shitty place. Lie, and lie. Like, okay, maybe was a motorcycle. I have no idea.
There was not.
I'm guessing there was no safe full of money.
Nope.
I don't want to guess her who she's had sex with, but that would be another enticing thing, I guess, for kind of creeps.
Yeah.
Like, oh, take my virginity.
Yes.
But like, yeah, she's probably had sex, or it doesn't matter. It's all a lie. Lie.
Lies. So she said, here's the catch, though. If you want to sleep with me, if you want to get the drugs, the money, the motorcycles, you not only do you have to kill her, but you have to follow my very specific instructions. And they include raping her and then strangling her. Detectives were like very sickened by this.
Well, yeah, because that's just her, like, okay, I don't mean this in the callous way it's going to sound, but it's one thing to just say, kill this person.
Right.
It's another to say, make them suffer. Rape them.
Well, she literally asked them to do
Right. So like
Tzatzi's worst fears that Tzatzi had just shared with her days before, which is beyond, like, what a sick individual.
I also wonder, and this is neither here nor there, and it doesn't matter to this case, but like, what if Tzatzi had said something totally out of the blue of like, you have to take me to the middle of the ocean and put cement things on my ankles? Okay, well, that might be my word. I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. But like, also, if that couldn't play out, I'm sure she still would have had them kill her.
Right.
But
she wouldn't have been able to do it in Tzatzi's worst. It just so happened that Tzatzi's worst way
so
of
like,
being
does
killed was
she hate her that much? Or
How could you hate anyone that much is what I wonder. Like,
unless they've tried to do the same thing to me,
Right.
which I still wouldn't, because
Right.
that is an energy of hate in my
Right.
heart. But still, oy,
right. So
wow.
Luis and Obed agreed. They said, okay. So on the morning of January 15th, they went to the house. They found a window in the back of the house that was open. They made their way inside and they found Tzatzi's room. Both men jumped on top of her, put a pillow over her face, and began to beat her. They ripped off her sweatpants grabbed an electrical cord, cut it from the lamp, and tied her hands up. And at this point, Obed was like, you take care of this. I'm going to go find the money, the drugs. So Obed starts going through the rest of the house looking for the valuables. But instead, he found Tony and Carlos, which he was not expecting.
They've all got like Gatorades by them.
They're
and like they're eating like crackers.
Right. Because Marcella had said nobody will be home.
Right.
So he was thrown off. So he went and got Luis and said, like, we got to fix this. They tied up. They had Tzatzi tied up, left her, dealt with Carlos and Tony, tied them up, put the blanket over their head. Obed went back to looking for valuables while Luis went back and raped and killed Tzatzi.
This is not the quote unquote interesting thing. I also imagine if they had just opened the door and seen those two bros passed out, drunk, sleep,
just quietly close the door.
Close the door, and again, it doesn't matter, and that's not a point here. Also, like
they really screwed themselves though because
that's the one that
witnesses.
Yep.
Yeah. So at this point, Obed has now spilled the beans. Doesn't matter that either of them have lawyers or not. They are both charged with conspiracy to commit murder and murder one. And since it was murder for hire, apparently in Las Vegas, that means that the death penalty is possible. And detectives are obviously thrilled. They have caught the people, but they are still missing one piece.
Yep.
Marcella.
Mm-hmm.
And she could be anywhere at this point. It's been days. So based on that bolo that they put out about her, because she took Kimberly's car, they get a tip that Marcella had been spotted about 1,200 miles away in Eagles Pass, Texas, crossing over the border into Mexico.
I was just thinking,
of course,
she could be out of the country,
and she sure was. She made her way back to her hometown of Durango, Mexico, and so the detectives connect with Mexican authorities, and the police detective, they're like, extradite her. We want her back. She just hired people to murder someone. And Mexican authorities said, nope.
Well, yeah, I wonder, is Mexico an extradition country?
It is.
But they just, for whatever reason, can say nay.
Because she's eligible for the death penalty, the Mexican justice system does not recognize the death penalty. So if there's ever a Mexican citizen that has committed a crime in the U.S. that is up for that could.
So if she was just life in prison, they would have said, "Here you are."
Right, but because they knew that she could get the death penalty, they refused to send her back.
I wonder if she knew that.
I don't know. That's a good question. That's interesting.
I mean, it doesn't matter, but yeah, I just wonder if she researched it that much, or
I didn't know.
Probably not, because she was just going back to hometown and out of the country.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So for months, the U.S. police, detectives, everyone are like battling with Mexican authorities to get her back, and so in like years go by. So we're in February 2004. Luis has his day in court. A jury finds him guilty. But before he's sentenced, prosecutors offer him a deal. They said, we'll take the death penalty off the table if you'll accept life in prison without the possibility of parole. He takes that deal. In May 2004, Obed also pleads guilty. And he is given 40 years in prison with the possibility of parole only after he serves those 40 years. So it could be longer, but he's given the option for parole. So death penalty has been taken off the table for both of them, which was purposeful because, because detectives now want to use this as an example. Like, hey, you see that we did not have the death penalty for them.
We'll work with you.
We'll work with you. And we will give Marcella the same courtesy if you will just send her back. They will not. They finally come to an agreement that Marcella will be tried for murder, but it will happen in a Mexican court. U.S. authorities really have nothing to do except for agree to this. They're worried it's not going to be a fair trial. Maybe she won't get, it'll be more lenient there, but like, what can they do? She's there. This is the best they're going to get. So they agree. And she was in fact convicted and sentenced to 39 years in a Mexican prison.
with the possibility. If there's a possibility of
It's not
parole,
even a
there's
possibility. She was sentenced to 39 years. She will
Period.
be let out in 39 years.
No
Yeah.
need for a possibility of this.
Nope.
No need for a possibility of
She
death.
will be released
Okay.
in 39 years.
Oh.
She will be in her 70s when she
So
will
this
be
was
released.
2004, so that'll be 40, 43, 40, 43,
Obed-
2043.
Yeah, Obed will be eligible for parole in 2044. That's 40 years for him. Luis will never be. He will spend his life in prison.
Obed's got 20 years from today,
Yep.
or this year.
And Marcella will be in her 70s when she will be released from her Mexican prison.
Well,
I feel like they should have. Marcella certainly should have gotten it. In my mind, that's a death penalty. Like she.
well, that's a whole nother conversation
it is.
about what's a bigger punishment, life in prison or
It
death.
is. That is. You're right. You're right.
And either which way, well, I guess the U.S. federal justice system, I guess it was better that they said, okay, let's do it there, because maybe they would have never gotten her back here.
They probably wouldn't have.
Right. So she's serving.
Yep. She's still in prison. I mean, absolutely. How much like jealousy I get and anger.
Well, that's what I don't actually understand the crux of it.
Well, I mean
I-
that she had never been in trouble before. Like she wasn't a violent person. Yeah, she was controlling. She was kind of not great in a relationship, but she had never committed a crime. She had never been violent.
Is the crux jealousy?
Yes. The crux of it was that she fell. But what's so funny is she did the same thing to Kimberlyn. She broke up with Kimberlyn
Right.
to be with Tzatzi. And then
Right,
Tzatzi
but
broke
it's
up with her
easier
to be
when
with
it's
Kimberlyn.
you.
Yeah.
You don't
And
have
she
to
couldn't
feel the
handle it.
jealousy.
And that was it. You have to, wow. That's a lot of jealousy to turn you into like a violent,
Well, I think
spiteful killer.
It has to go beyond jealousy. There's got to be a beyond and a beyond and beyond.
Yeah, there has to be
word.
something off in your brain to do that. Because I'm a jealous person, admittedly, and I can't imagine. I mean, I'm not even going to go down that road. But
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I can't. But
You can be jealous. That's why I say and whether or not it's her mental state or something beyond,
Right.
like there's just, or maybe
Yeah.
it just for her was
Awful.
jealousy.
bad, huh?
Interesting. Awful, but yes.
Did you suspect that from the beginning?
I mean, I suspected it was a tussle up of this
Like a triangle of love,
something,
Yeah.
but I did not know how it would play out at all.
Rough. Really, really an awful, awful story and tragic for everyone involved. Certainly. I wonder where Kimberlyn is. That's what I was wondering. I couldn't really find anything. Like, wow. The person that she was in a relationship with and like found this like love connection with was murdered, horrifically murdered. And the person that she had previously been in a relationship with for many, many years.
Past loves or current,
Gone.
current past loves.
Yeah. I actually, I thought of a term when I was learning about this that I weirdly had seen on Pretty Little Liars, and I'd never heard this before. Like when someone close to you either loses their mind or goes to prison or like, essentially it's a death without the actual death. It's called an ambiguous grief or ambiguous loss.
That
where
makes
like,
sense.
It's
They're still alive, but they're dead.
but they're dead. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just saw an episode
makes
where they
sense.
talked about that the other day, and I was like, that feels like that pertains to this. Like Marcella is not dead, but essentially she's dead, and that's a really weird loss, I would imagine, to kind of cope with. I mean, all losses are hard to cope with, but that would be a very. They're
I
still
think there's
alive.
different levels.
Yeah, yeah.
I think death, not in an awful, terrible way, but death is a quote unquote less worse death than some others where
Yeah.
it's whatever could fall under ambiguous, where they're
Right.
still alive, but you're not with them, and they're you don't have access to them.
Right.
and-
It's confusing, I think, for your like brain at that point. You know, it's all loss is confusing, but like, I don't know. I don't know. That's a big conversation. But yeah, a tragic story, and thoughts are with Tzatzi's family and really all the families involved, as always, because it's just terrible.
I wonder if Tzatzi's family, this was little less than 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean this rudely.
Mm-hmm.
Stress and grief and terribleness can cause a lot of heartache and pain and internal disease.
Yeah.
I wonder who's still alive from our family.
Yeah. I would be interested to know that. And Kimberlyn, I would be interested
Yeah,
to know.
any of them. All of them. Any of them.
Yeah. So,
Happy Sunday.
I mean, geez.
Or oh, yes.
I know.
It is
I actually
Sunday.
thought about doing something, and I'm going to throw this out there and then we'll sign off. And this might be too something. I don't know what the word is, but I was like, I wonder if like at the end of these we have a little chat at the end after they end, whatnot. And like, I used to write for this online publication, only good stories, good news stories. Like somebody found $1 million and donated it to this or whatever. And I was like, I wonder if at the end of this, like we close the episode and whatnot appropriately. And then like, let's share a brief 5-minute, like positive story to end on. Or does that feel like too...
I don't like it.
Yeah.
But that's me.
It feels a little too like...
No, that's me. I bet a lot of people would like that. I don't like it. I also think there's a thing of like, these are all tragic. So maybe we should just end and say like, that's the end.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Our thoughts are with the families.
Exactly.
And goodbye.
Like, of course, it's all tragic. And I'm not shitting on you. Like, there's only so many words that we can say, right?
None of the words really matter.
It's terrible. It's tragic. It's awful.
I think it's nice. I think it's
this is what happened.
Period. Hopefully we did it justice. The end.
That's it.
Okay. Then let's sign off.
Good night and good luck.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.